Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Ummah Radio. You are listening to the Aqeedah class with myself, Abu Mus'ab. We have been doing the tafsir, rather the Aqeedah, which is famously known as Aqeedatut Tahaawiyyah, written by Imam At-Tahaawi rahimahullah, which is arguably the most famous book of Aqeedah, and it explains the Aqeedah of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. We have done a couple of lessons, about 3 or so far. Okay, for those of you who are new, you can download the kitab via Ummah forum. You will find a download link in the Ummah Radio section of the forum. There'll be a thread called a sticky thread called Monday Aqeedah and Hadith class. In there you will find the download link for the kitab Aqeedatut Tahaawiyyah, and if you want to, you download it and you can follow the classes directly up from the book. If you do happen to do that, then we are currently on page 6 of that particular print of the book. Okay. Furthermore, if you have any questions regarding anything about the lesson, you can send in your questions via Skype, the Skype name being Ummah Radio. Alright then, moving on to the lesson itself. Without further ado, we can start here. Bismillah walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. In our last lesson, we had just touched on the point number 35 mentioned in this kitab, with regards to seeing Allah by the people of Jannah. وَالرُّؤْيَةُ حَقٌّ لِأَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ, that the seeing of Allah in the year after by the people of Jannah, it is factual and it is a reality. And we read the entire point 35. This particular point carries on over the next few points as well. So we had stopped at number 36, and that is where we will start from. So he says, ولا تثبت قدم الإسلام إلا على ظهر التسليم والاستسلام. Like I said, you have to understand that this is a follow-up from the previous point on with regards to the seeing of Allah in the year after, and likewise it also applies to many of the other attributes of Allah as well. So he says that the foot of Islam, or rather a person's foot in Islam, to put it in a better way, cannot be firm and steadfast إلا على ظهر التسليم والاستسلام, except if it is on the back of submission and surrender. So he continues, he explains it here better than I can. So he says, فمن رام علم ما حضر عنه علمه ولم يقنع بالتسليم فهمه حجبه مرامه عن خالص التوحيد وصافي المعرفة وصحيح الإيمان. He says, for the person who, as you say now, who aims to get that knowledge which he has no way of gaining, meaning this is such knowledge which is beyond the abilities of human beings. Obviously, like we know, it's impossible for anyone to comprehend Allah. We know bits and bobs given here and there, that Allah is like this and like that, but we do not interpret it, we do not explain it, how or anything. We believe in Allah, we believe in the unseen, just like that, without any interpretations, without any tashbih, likening Allah to the creation, nor any ta'atil, any negation of any of the attributes of Allah. So he says that if a person now is not satisfied with submission and surrender, saying Allah knows best and that's it, Allah knows what it means, we don't know, we just accept it because Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said so. If a person is not happy with this, وَلَمْ يَقْنَعْ بِالتَّسْلِيمِ فَهْمُهُ, is not satisfied with surrendering his understanding and putting all that out of his mind and just accepting what Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said, حَجَبَهُ مَرَامُهُ عَنْ خَالِصِ التَّوْحِيدِ, his goal and his aim, this of wanting to attain this knowledge, it will veil him from getting the pure tawheed, to basically believe and understand the tawheed in Allah, as you can say, Allah's tawheed. And he says also wasafil ma'rifah, the clear recognition, the clear pure recognition of Allah. A person will not be able to get this, because now you are wasting your time trying to understand Allah with your limited understanding, which is something you will never be able to do. So you'll be chasing shadows the rest of your life, and you'll never be able to truly understand Tawheed and get the ma'rifah of Allah. And additionally, he says wasahihul iman, likewise a person will not be able to attain true iman if you are not satisfied to submit and surrender to how Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam had simply given us everything straight, and we just accept it as that and we believe in it. If you are not happy with that, then you'll never be able to attain true iman. He says فتذبذبوا بين الكفر والإيمان والتصديق والتكذيب والإقرار والإنكار موسوسا تائها شاكا لا مؤمنا مصدقا ولا جاحدا مكذبا. He says, so a person, when you run after shadows like this, then فتذبذبوا بين الكفر والإيمان, you waver between kufr and iman. You are walking the thin and narrow. You are there on the border of Jahannam. You can you can go any way. You can fall into Jahannam and become a kafir, or you can be saved and just manage to scrape by and get into Jannah, depending on which way you happen to fall on that narrow path that you are walking. So he says فَتَذَبْذَبُ بَيْنَ الْكُفْرِ وَالْإِيمَانِ, he wavers between kufr and iman, وَالتَّصْدِيقِ وَالتَّكْذِيب, between affirmation or rejection, or you can say belying, and wal-iqrari wal-inkar, acceptance and denial. So you are iman is on the one side, kufr is on the other side. Tasdeeq, affirmation of everything that Islam has taught us, or takdeeb, the rejection on the other side. Iqrar, the acceptance, and inkar, the denial. So you are walking here, depending on which way you fall, that's what path. Either you fall onto the path of iman and tasdeeq and iqrar, so the path of iman, of affirmation and of acceptance, or you fall into the path of kufr and rejection and denial. So this is a very dangerous path to walk, and you will find yourself more often than not probably falling into the wrong path. And in fact, he says here, muwaswasan ta'ihan shakan, a person will be full of doubt, confusion, and as you can say, wandering aimlessly, being in his astrayness. La mu'mina musaddiqa, not a proper believing mu'min. No, wala jahidan mukadhiba, no, at the other extreme, being a denying rejecter. So this person is basically, he doesn't know where he is. And in fact, we can see many of these type of people time and again we see them, people coming onto Ummah forum. Most of the time we reject them as trolls. So we say this person is clearly trolling, we don't bother with that person. But there are actual factual cases like this as well, of people when not necessarily for this. Okay, it is very similar, because people are not satisfied just accepting the laws of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but rather they want to apply their kufr logic and things, because America says homosexuality is okay and Islam says a homosexual should be killed, so a person who engages in homosexual acts, he should be put to death. So now they seem to feel, why is this is wrong, Islam is barbaric and what all and what not, wa na'udhu billahi min dhalik. So because of them not wanting to submit and surrender to the commands of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they end up walking this path of wavering between kufr and iman. Obviously most of these people, like I say, they tend to fall into the path of kufr, and they, Allahu a'lam, where the end result will be, whether they accept Islam before they die, or whether they die on this kufr and end up fi nari jahannam khalidina fiha abada. So it's a very serious thing, as you can quite clearly see, that's why our iman is the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. The Quran is the guidance, a book wherein there is no doubt. لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. It is a guidance for the people of taqwa. الذين يؤمنون بالغيب. Those who believe in the unseen. If you're not willing to do this and you want to be like those people, no, you want to see Allah, you want to do this, you want manna and salwa to come down from the heavens for you, you want the laws of Allah to follow your feelings and your thinkings, because you feel stoning of an adulterer, cutting off the hand of a thief, and things like this are all barbaric, and why should an apostate be killed, and all these sort of things, then people who make these sort of statements, I'm not making the takfir of anyone. I'm not a takfiri in case anyone trying to claim it. I'm just saying straightforward what Islam says, that if you happen to be on this path, more often than not you tend to fall into the path of batil, and you will end up amongst the people of batil, fi nari jahannam. So be very careful as to where you go. Take the path of acceptance and submission to Allah and to the commands that Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has placed down, and you will be successful. The thing which made the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum so successful in everything, they had one salient feature which stood out over all others, and Allah took the Jews to task because they did not have this quality, and that is sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey, while the Jews were sami'na wa asayna. We hear and we disobey. And today if we look at ourselves, we find that we are like the Jews. We are sami'na wa asayna. We hear and we disobey. How often is it? Every time a person, you look left, right and center, there's a person, you make a statement, this is what Allah says, this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, and then people are like, why, how, this, that, all these sort of things. They're not willing to accept the law of Allah. So this is when the law, the Jews, they came to the mushrikeen, and then the kuffar, they came to Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu after the incident of the Mi'raj. Obviously this was before anybody was, basically before Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu came to know about the incident. And they said, you know what, do you think it's possible that a person could travel from Makkah to Baytul Maqdis and so on and so forth, all of this in one night? Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu said, no, it's not possible. They said, well, your friend, meaning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is saying that he did it, and he went, not only there, he went up to Jannah and everything, and came back all in one night. Then Hazrat Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, he said immediately, in that case I believe it 100%. This is what is sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. No doubts, no reluctance, no holding back. When the command comes, when Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes, then there is no room for anybody's personal opinions. There's only acceptance and submission to the commands of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Alright, moving on to the next piece. He says, ولا يصح الإيمان بالرؤية لأهل دار السلام لمن اعتبرها منهم بوهم أو تأولها بفهم، إذ كان تأويل الرؤية وتأويل كل معنى يضاف إلى الربوبية بترك التأويل ولزوم التسليم وعليه دين المسلمين. He says that the iman he says that to believe in this seeing of Allah by the people of Jannah, Darus Salam here would refers to the Ahlul Jannah, the people of Jannah. It will not be correct if a person now tries to understand it and give his own interpretations in it and think, okay, he says لِمَنِ اعْتَبَرَهَا مِنُمْ بِوَهْمٍ, according to his imagination. Okay, he imagines it's going to be like this, or it's going to be like that, and all these sort of things. Or he says أَوْ تَأَوَّلَهَا بِفَهْمٍ, or he interprets it according to his own understanding. So we know that, like was mentioned in 2 points previously, like I say in the last class, which was 2 weeks ago, that the seeing of Allah on the day of Qiyamah in Jannah by the Muslims is a definite fact. It's part of the Aqeedah of the Muslims, and it's the Aqeedah of the Batil people, like the Mu'tazila, who rejected the seeing of Allah by the people of Jannah. but that will come a bit later on. I'll explain it at its own time. So in any case, he says that the iman of the people will not be correct if they believe that the people will see Jannah, that the people of Jannah will see Allah, but they are now interpreting it according to their understandings, or they are having their own imaginations and things that this and this and this is how it is going to be. So because he says إذ كان تأويل الرؤية وتأويل كل معنى يضاف إلى الربوبية بترك التأويل ولزوم التسليم وعليه دين المسلمين. He says because the interpretation of the ru'ya, of the seeing of Allah, and likewise the interpretation of every other attribute and meaning which is as you can say attributed to Allah, then this is bitarki ta'wil. We do not make ta'wil. Us not making ta'wil, that itself is the ta'wil. And he says by leaving of ta'wil and just accepting it, adhering to submission, this is the correct way. To explain it in, as you can say, in a nicer terminology, Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna rahimahullah, he had made a very similar statement. He said that everything that Allah describes or attributes to himself in the Quran, فَقِرَاءَتُهُ تَفْسِيرُهُ, the recitation of that ayah, the recitation of that hadith, the recitation of that particular attribute as is mentioned in the Quran and Hadith, that is its interpretation. La kayf wa la masal. No howness, we don't give it a kayf, no masal, nor do we give it any likeness. We don't say it's similar to this, or it's like this, or it will be this and this and this. No, we do not make any interpretations. We accept the attributes of Allah the way Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us, and that's it. We don't go further. We don't start saying it is like this or like that. Nor do we go to the other extreme where we negate the attributes. So we of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we take the middle path and we stick to the believing numirruha kama ja'at. We leave it, we take it as it has come, and without negating any meaning nor interpreting it in any particular way. So he says وَعَلَيْهِ دِينُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and upon this is the deen, the religion of the Muslims, that to go without ta'wil, this is the correct manner. But obviously, like I explained in one of the previous classes quite early back, before we had, or rather during the time when we were doing Aqeedatut murshida, and even in the class before that, I explained the reason why the ta'wil came here by the ulama, why they had to resort to ta'wil in the first place, as a result of the influence that the philosophers and the kuffar started having over the Muslims, and the Muslims' aqidah started getting corrupted by these people. So there became the necessity for the ulama to now explain the attributes of Allah, to keep the people on the straight path, so that they do not take the path of those who started making Allah into a human being and all these sort of things. Therefore there was a purpose behind it, and this is why as you can say, ta'wil, the interpretation of the attributes of Allah, first actually came about in the first place. Otherwise there would have been no need to come about with it if this deviancy had not crept into the ummah. But in any case, that is a topic again for another time. So continuing on, he says وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتَوَقَّ النَّفْيُ وَالتَّشْبِيهِ زَلَّ وَلَمْ يُصِبِ التَّنْزِيهِ, that the person who does not refrain from nafi means to negate an attribute of Allah. Another name for nafi, or rather the more correct term which you will be finding in the books of Aqeedah, is ta'atil. Ta'atil means to negate an attribute of Allah. And he says وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتَوَقَّ النَّفْيُ وَالتَّشْبِيهِ, tashbih is the opposite. So ta'atil means to negate an attribute, and tashbih means to liken Allah to the creation. He says Zalla walam yusib tanzih, such a person has gone astray and he has failed to do the tanzih, to understand that Allah is not like His creation, that Allah is free from any of these qualities of creation. So the two opposites, one is nafi, which is termed as ta'atil, where you say no, you negate the attribute altogether, because like you can say, like I mentioned earlier, the Mu'tazila, for example, they made ta'atil of the sifa, of seeing of Allah, because they said that it is impossible for people to be able to see Allah, because being seen is an attribute of created things. So therefore, because of this, they negated that Allah will be seen in the year after. So they made ta'atil, they negated an attribute of Allah. Another group of other deviant sect, the Mushabbiha, they went to the other extreme. They did tashbih. They likened Allah to the creation. So when the hadith came and said that Allah will be seen in the year after, then they started saying that Allah will be seen like this and like this and like this. For example, when Allah says that He has a yad, then they say yadun ka yadin, a hand like our hand, like a hand of a human being or an animal or whatever other hand they come about with. They give Allah limbs, hands, arms, fingers, limbs like this, and this is the other extreme. We of the Ahlul Sunnah, we say that Allah has attributed Himself with a yad and with asabi' and with a wajh and so on and so forth, and we accept it like that. We do not delve into it and say it means this or that or anything of the sort. We say Allahu a'lamu bi muradihi, Allah knows best what its meaning is. We do not interpret it, we leave it. We make tafweed, we leave the meaning of it to Allah. So that is what is here with the nafi and the tashbih. So he says, فإن ربنا جل وعلا موصوف بصفات الوحدانية منعود بنعوت الفردانية ليس في معناه أحد من البرية. He says, continuing on from his point where he said that whoever does not refrain from negating the attributes of Allah and does not refrain from likening Allah to the creation, then such a person has gone astray, and he is not been able to comprehend, nor has he been able to reach the point where he understands that Allah is unlike any of His creation. Because our Lord Jalla wa Ala, high and lofty as He is attributed and described with wahdaniyah. Wahdaniyah means that unique oneness of Allah. And He says manu'utun binu'util fardaniyah, that Allah is described with the quality of fardaniyah, being unique in that there is nothing or no one on anything that you can liken or even have any similarity to Allah. He says ليس في معناه أحد من البرية, there is no thing in the creation which is in any way similar to Allah. That is the end of page 6. We will move on to page 7 and point 38. This is a very important point which comes next, and it's a point of a lot of as you can say arguments based on this point here. You'll find this one of the most famous sentences from Aqeedatut Tahaawiyyah. He says, وتعالى عن الحدود والغايات والأركان والأعضاء والأدوات لا تحويه الجهات الست كسائر المبتدعات. Very, very famous statement. He says that Allah is above and beyond having any boundaries or limits or any parts or limbs or tools, to put it in that way. So here, this part here itself, it negates, a person can speak for a very long time on this point here, putting into perspective on the deviancies of the deviant sects who had passed by and those who still exist today, where some people put limits on Allah and they say that Allah has limits, Allah is limited. Like how the atheists and all these other kuffar, they put limits on Allah. hudud and ghayat. And then arkan and a'adha and adawat, all this parts and limbs and things like this. This comes now again from the mushabbiha, when, like I mentioned, in fact you find people till today, juhal, who think they know things, and you find them writing on forums. I won't mention the name of the forums, but you find them writing there through their own interpretations and stuff, where they start saying that Allah has limbs and this and that. And in fact, if you didn't know and you were reading it, you'd think they were talking about some human being, the way they speak about Allah. So all of this is deviancy, which is not part of the aqidah of the Ahlul Sunnah. In any case, he continues, لا تحويه الجهات الست كسائر المبتدعات, that the 6 directions, up, down, left, right, front and back, and obviously all other sub-directions therein as well. لا تحويه الجهات الست, these directions do not contain Allah like how all other created things are contained. And this is a very important point here, like I mentioned, because some people, they limit Allah to a particular place and they say that Allah is here or Allah is there and things like this, which is, like I mentioned, is an incorrect statement, because the hadith of Bukhari, authentic obviously, says that كان الله ولم يكن شيء غيره, that Allah existed and there was nothing in existence besides Allah. And anybody who knows Arabic, in fact, if you I think we'll be coming soon to that particular point. Okay, we didn't quite, that will come in a bit of a later class in our Wednesday Arabic classes. But in any case, you have something which is known as ma'rifa and nakira, as you can say, definite and indefinite. Now an indefinite noun, when we say وَالنَّكِرَةُ تُفِيدُ الْعُمُومِ, an indefinite noun, it gives the meaning of unrestrictedness. It can apply from the very smallest thing to the very biggest, largest thing. So when the hadith came and said that كان الله ولم يكن شيء, شيء is nakira, it is an indefinite noun. So it therefore means that nothing was in existence besides Allah. Now, unless you hold the belief of there having multiple gods, that time is a god, space is a god, this and that is all gods, that it was existing with Allah, obviously then we've got a bit of a problem if you're holding such a belief. But otherwise, obviously, any person of common sense will know that when the hadith said nothing existed, then it meant nothing existed. So no time, no place, no nothing. So like Allah existed without time or without place or anything back then, likewise till now Allah exists without time or without place and all these other things as well. There was no change. Now Allah created the creation, Allah created space and time and created the arsh, and then somehow, some way, similar to a Christian belief of them beholding Jesus came down as man and then decided to have himself killed for the sins of humanity and all these sort of stuff here, that now suddenly Allah created time and space and the arsh and everything, and then limited Allah's self and started being contained and limited by Allah's own creation. Basically, what it means then is that the creation ends up having more power than Allah, because the creation encompasses Allah. If you can just follow that train of thought, and you can see where it leads you. So therefore, like I explained when we did Aqeedatut Murshida, that when you find the Salaf all and them saying that Allah is ala al-arsh, ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, and things like this, then yes, there is no contradiction between this and between saying that Allah exists without a place. Many people today, they are unable to comprehend this. Obviously, seems like they are trying to understand Allah with their minds, so therefore they find a problem with it. But like I say, Allah existed without a place before, Allah exists without a place now. So when Allah said Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa, then we accept it. وَتَفْسِيرُهُ وَقِرَاءَتُهُ تَفْسِيرُهُ, the recitation of the ayah, that is its tafsir, and it's ta'wil, and we don't get any deeper involved in it than that. So like I say, there's no contradiction between saying Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa and saying that Allah exists without a place. If Allah said that, like people normally translate it, that He has risen above the throne, then we say that Allah had done so as He has said, without being limited or contained within His creation, and the creation of Allah, like I say, obviously applies to space and time and everything else in between as well. So that is the point 38. Okay, that is now basically the end of the part where he discussed the, how to say this now, the seeing of Allah in Jannah. The next part now will continue on to Mi'raj, and basically it's moving now a bit away from for a bit at least from the attributes of Allah, and now a little bit onto Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So inshallah we will end here for tonight, and next time we can continue here from page 7, point number 39 of Aqeedatut Tahaawiyyah. So until then, we will end here and we say, وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.